Welcome to ESI Africa Insights. For this episode, I am speaking with Mziyanda Mbuseli, who is the Market Surveillance Manager at the Southern African Power Pool, and we will be talking about interconnection and other topics. Welcome to the studio, Mziyanda.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, to start off with, in the last 6 months, what has characterized the overall performance of the Southern African Power Pool market, and what could have changed?
Over the last few months, we've seen an increase in trading taking place through the bilateral contracts, and that has led to lower volumes traded into our month ahead, week ahead, and day ahead markets. And this has been as a result of constrained generation capacity in the region. We currently have a persistent drought that has affected hydropower generation. This has been coupled also by transmission constraints, where our interconnectors have been dominated by bilateral contracts and therefore having less volumes traded in our competitive markets. Specific changes, as I've mentioned, has been supply side constraints. As you may be aware that currently in the region we've got a deficit where we're seeing a situation where supply is exceeding demand. And that's been what has obtained over the last few months on our markets.
Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of talk about expanding transmission networks, and I think that's really an important part of the Southern African Power Pool in order to operate optimally. So what are the ideal conditions for establishing a fully competitive wholesale electricity market? And is a hybrid multi-market structure more appealing?
In terms of establishing a fully competitive market, there really is never a perfect time to say these conditions are fully ideal. However, I believe that every internal market or every region should look at issues that are pertinent to that region in terms of designing a suitable wholesale electricity market structure. Of course, the market structure has to be supported by the enabling environment. You need to have the right policy in place, the right legislation, as well as the right regulations that will enable a fully competitive electricity market. From a regional perspective, if we talk at SADC level, you need institutions at SADC level that can make policy that will be adopted and enforceable across all countries. Similarly, from a regulatory perspective, at the moment, we've got a Regional Electricity Regulators Association, which is not authoritative in nature. And ideally, you need a regulator that can enforce rules and regulations across the border. So this really talks to the issue of harmonizing regulations and policies across the region.
Mm-hmm. So you do a lot of correspondence with the different regulators to manage this?
Yes. We are always in touch with the regulators. We are always in touch with the ministries of electricity and energy in respective countries. Similarly, we are always in contact with the incumbent electricity market players in the region. And to your earlier question around the hybrid model, that's definitely an ideal way to start as you migrate, typically from a vertically integrated monopoly market. You would typically move to a structure where you introduce private players through a single buyer model. Some countries have what is called a modified single buyer model. And then you migrate to a wholesale market that will still possibly for some time have bilateral contracts as well. And that is what we refer to as a multi-market model, where you allow legacy bilateral contracts and arrangements to continue side by side a wholesale competitive market. And over time, you refine. As the SAPP, for example, we started with a day-ahead market. We have since introduced a week-ahead market and a month-ahead market. We are actually also exploring a year-ahead market where people can secure their supply. So the point I'm making really is that markets have to be synchronized or rather designed to suit the prevailing circumstances. And this process has to be stepwise and carefully managed.
Mm-hmm. And do you ever correspond with the other power pools in Africa to see what they're doing and how you can maybe share ideas?
Definitely. Currently, we are in conversations with East Africa Power Pool. We actually have working structures, committees with East Africa Power Pool. We have the transmission line now that's under construction that will connect Zambia, Tanzania, and Kenya. That line, when it comes into operation, it will effectively connect the Southern African Power Pool with the East African Power Pool. And with that comes into play issues of managing the interconnected power system, the issues of managing the trading. How will the trading happen between the power pools? How will the settlements happen between the power pools? Issues of regulations between two economic blocks, which is the East African Community and SADC. How will those work? So that's a typical example of a wholesale market between two power pools where you have to sort out policy, you have to sort out legislation, and you have to sort out regulations all the way down to the operation of the interconnected power system. So yes, definitely we are in contact with the other power pools. Similarly, we are contributing on the Africa Single Electricity Market concept, where ultimately we are looking at having all the power pools in Africa interconnected.
So we're well on the way to actually achieving that African single electricity market.
Definitely. When you look at the interconnection between East African Power Pool and Southern African Power Pool, you have necessarily connected the system through the eastern block of the continent, where electrons could now move from Cape Town to Egypt simply by unlocking that interconnection to the East African Power Pool. Similarly, on the western side, you've got Angola, that is a member of Southern African Power Pool as well as a member of the West African Power Pool. So when we unlock interconnection on the western corridor, that will also unlock another trade route, and naturally the Africa Single Electricity Market will come into existence.
Oh, that's very good news. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
It's a pleasure.
And thank you for watching. Tune in for the next episode of ESI Africa Insights and have a powerful day.